stop. You haven't subscribed to the channel yet? Subscribe now. We have new stories every day. Now let's go. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioner, its dull sound masking the growing tension between me and Mark. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his laptop for the 100th time that day, his brows furrowed in frustration. Mark, my husband of 12 years, had lost his job over a year ago, and the strain of his unemployment was wearing thin on both of us. Our 3 kids, aged 10, 8, and 5, were playing in the backyard, their laughter carrying through the window. Oblivious to the financial storm looming over us, they deserved better than this. I worked long hours as an office manager for a small company, but it wasn't enough. We had a mortgage to pay, loans to cover, and mouths to feed. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at the stack of unpaid bills. "Any luck?" I asked, my voice betraying the impatience I tried to suppress. Mark sighed heavily, closing his laptop. "No, another rejection. They're either not hiring or want someone younger or with more niche experience." I crossed my arms. "Maybe it's time to lower your expectations. Take something, anything, just to get by." He frowned, his jaw tightening. "It's not that simple, Jenna. A job that barely pays won't help us. We need something sustainable. And sitting here doing nothing is sustainable." The words slipped out before I could stop them. His expression darkened, and I regretted my tone immediately. "I'm not sitting here doing nothing," he snapped, his voice tight with anger. "I'm trying. Do you think I like this? Watching you carry all the weight?" I opened my mouth to respond but stopped myself. We had had this argument too many times. Instead, I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Mark called after me. "To work," I said curtly. Unlike some people, I don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect opportunity. At work, my day was filled with paperwork, phone calls, and the occasional small talk with my colleagues. But lately, my attention had been drawn to one man, Richard. He was in his early 50s, tall, with silver-streaked hair and an air of authority that made him impossible to ignore. Richard was the company's VP, and though he rarely interacted with staff at my level, I had noticed the way his eyes lingered on me during meetings. It started innocently enough. I'd ask him questions about work, seek his advice, and smile a little longer than necessary. Over time, our conversations became more personal. He'd compliment my work ethic, my outfit, even my smile. I knew he was married, but something about his attention made me feel alive again, like I was more than just an overworked wife and mother. Richard exuded confidence, the kind that comes with success and experience. He always dressed impeccably, his tailored suits a stark contrast to my husband's worn-out jeans and shirts these days. I tried not to compare, but it was hard not to notice the difference. One evening, after a long day, Richard approached me in the parking lot. "Jenna," he said, his voice smooth and inviting. "A few of us are heading to the bar. Care to join?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, why not?" That night, over drinks, I let my guard down. Richard was charming, attentive, and genuinely interested in my struggles. "You deserve more than this," he said at one point, his hand rushing mine. "You're smart, capable. Someone like you shouldn't have to worry about money." Our relationship escalated quickly. A business trip to Chicago became the turning point. After a late dinner and one too many glasses of wine, we ended up sharing a hotel room. I told myself it was a mistake, a lapse in judgment, but it didn't stop there. Richard and I began an affair, meeting in secret, stealing moments whenever we could. Richard had a way of making me feel seen, valued. With him, I wasn't just Jenna, the exhausted wife and mother. I was desirable, confident, alive. One afternoon, as we lay tangled in the sheets of his downtown apartment, I decided to test the waters. "Richard," I began hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" He propped himself up on one elbow, studying me. "Anything." "Mark, my husband. He's been out of work for over a year. It's killing us financially. I don't suppose you could help? Maybe find him something at the company." Richard raised an eyebrow. "You want me to give your husband a job?" I nodded, my cheeks burning. "He doesn't need to know it's from you. Just something to get us back on our feet." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "You're something else, Jenna. But I'll see what I can do. A month later, Mark got a call from a tech firm offering him a mid-level management position. It wasn't exactly his dream job, but the pay was good and the company had growth potential. He was ecstatic. I can't believe it, he said, hugging me tightly. I finally caught a break. I smiled, though guilt gnawed at my insides. See? Things are turning around. With Mark's new job and a raise I received shortly after, our financial situation improved. We could pay our bills, take the kids out for ice cream, even plan a modest vacation. On the surface, everything was perfect. But beneath it all, I was drowning in shame. I ended things with Richard shortly after Mark started his new job. I can't do this anymore, I told him during our final meeting. It's not right. He didn't argue. I'll miss you, he said simply, kissing me one last time. Months passed, and life settled into a new normal. Mark never suspected a thing, and I threw myself into being a better wife and mother. But sometimes, late at night, I'd lie awake, haunted by what I'd done. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the kids play, Mark turned to me. You know, he said, I've been thinking. I owe you an apology. I frowned. For what? For not being enough. For letting you carry us when I couldn't. My throat tightened. Mark, you don't. No, he interrupted. I mean it. You're incredible, Jen. I don't know how I got so lucky. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced a smile. We're a team, I said. That's what matters. As he pulled me into a hug, I closed my eyes, willing the guilt to fade. I'd made my choices, flawed, selfish choices, but they had brought us here to a life worth fighting for. And while I couldn't undo the past, I could strive to be better moving forward. For my family, for myself.